and
Uh,
crannies. And that brings us to the point of lots of nooks and crannies. Okay, you're talking something like, say, dates or oh shoot, star fruits, things like that have odd shapes, fruit with odd
see,
shapes.
yeah, now see, even apples with the crevice from the where the stem is and where the bloom end is.
Mm-hmm.
And also, if you're using wild apples that haven't been sprayed, I always cut those in half because you never know what's hiding in them.
Well, and with supermarket, if you do supermarket apples, now see, I do
Some of them, yeah, some supermarket apples are covered with wax.
are covered with wax, exactly. And at that point, honestly, the best thing you can do if it's waxed is to peel it. I mean, it's hard to get the wax off without seriously damaging the apple. And, and so at that point, it's easier to just peel it and be done with it. I mean, you lose some character without having those, apple peels in there, but, them's the breaks, and that's what you got to do. Frankly, I mean, honestly, if you're at that point, I would say buy cider.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
go ahead and go straight to juice, because then at least you know what's in it, and you're not buying wax.
And
that's what I do. I buy organic apple juice and be done with it.
And that's fine.
Yeah. Now the other possibility, Manny, is if you just buy frozen fruit, you can assume that that's safe for humans to eat and has been washed and picked over.
Yeah.
So if you buy your fruit frozen, then that's even better. I buy frozen raspberries just because there's nowhere I can go to get raspberries at a reasonable price before they get moldy.
Mm-hmm.
So I every time they go on sale, I go stock up and fill my freezer with them, and then forget to actually make the wine with them.
I've got about 20 pounds of strawberries that I've bought from the local farmers that are in freezer bags downstairs that I really need to do something with. But
I have about 100 pounds of fruit that is taking up a whole 5 cubic foot freezer that needs to be turned into. Yeah, I don't have room to put anything else in there. I have to actually get around to making some stuff there.
Yeah, John's been threatening me about that, so I really I'm going to do something with it probably in the next month. So yeah, that's got to happen. So yeah, I mean, just get it clean. That's the big thing. I mean, and there's obvious things like some of the and again with some other fruits, like.
Yeah, you can't really scrub a raspberry. I don't wash raspberries
really, no.
either, because all I can do is sort of put them in a colander and use the shower head spray from my sink, and give them a little bounce and then right into the pot.
Even that mooshes them. So and I mean you can stop a lot of things by freezing them. I mean in freezing. I don't know, and there were people who disagree with me on this. I believe that, I mean, even when I'm getting fresh fruit, I will freeze it. And then even if it's just freeze it overnight and then take it out, thaw it back out, mash it, and put it in my mead, because I want that cell wall breakage that happens when it freezes.
I will tell you right now, having had experience with making my own apple cider, you do get a better yield of juice when you've frozen it.
Yeah, you do.
You do.
And it just makes it breaks it down not only for more juice, but it breaks it down so it's easier to mash.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
It changes the texture of the fruit, so it might not taste as good in your mouth, texture-wise. It does flavor-wise, but texture-wise,
but
it
it's
gets some of them a
fine
little
for
weird,
mead.
But it's perfect for me. I do this with mangoes. We've got periodically, about every 2 weeks, Harris Teeter here will have the 10 mangoes for $10, so it's $1 a mango, and which is a heck of a deal. Usually they're like a couple dollars a piece. So every time they do that, I buy 10 mangoes, bring them home, and spend the next hour peeling and slicing off mango meat and stuffing them in freezer bags and sticking them in the freezer, like we do with the other stuff, till I've got enough to make a mead. And I have in mind of doing a mango pineapple. We'll see what happens with that. But it's
now the reason you want to mash your fruit is to give the must and the yeast access to all of the fruit juice.
Mm-hmm. And maximum.
And if you look at a raspberry, maximum
exposure.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. You're basically getting more of the fruit exposed to the yeast process.
Yeah, now stuff like apples and strawberries only need sort of a cursory mashing, in my experience, because the yeast really goes to town on them. The only reason I run my apples through a grater is because I'm pressing them before I ferment them, but if I were to ferment them first, I'd get a way better yield. I'm not interested in the amount of fruit flies that would cause.
Yeah.
But if you look at something like a raspberry, each of those little tiny cells that makes up, each seed is wrapped with a little cell of deliciousness.
Raspberry goodness, yes.
Yeah, and if you don't pop each one of those, then the yeast can't get into it to ferment it. Mm-hmm. Just like each blueberry, if you can't pop it somehow, then the yeast, can't get into it. I've had cases where I've gone into the fruit bag after fermenting and found whole berries, and you just pinch them and they're squish and there's juice all over the place, and you're really missing out if you don't. Even citrus. Okay, it's fine for Joe's Ancient Orange. It'll do its thing, but I find that the little cells of citrus juice that are in, if you take an orange peel and take a slice of orange and sort of turn it inside out, you can see all these discrete little bits in there. And if you don't pop those, then the yeast may not get a chance to deal with them. So usually, even when I'm making a JAO now, I don't just stuff the whole fruit in. I usually put the rind in, or I use the zest because the rind gives me heartburn, but I actually use my juicer, and I put the juice in and I put the zest in and call it good enough. Mm-hmm. This is how I break the recipe, and it seems to work for me.
Yeah, well, and I think that was the point, is he's getting the entire orange. You're just getting the entire orange except the white bits, which give me heartburn too, so yeah.
Exactly.
It's...
So, you want to, every little segment of fruit, you want to get that pierced. And if it's a fruit that's sort of fleshy, like an apple or a strawberry or a mango or a pineapple, I think it's not quite so important to do that. But freezing will also really release a lot more juice, especially in that type of fruit.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of people who use juices and purees.
Yeah. I did an amazing raspberry melomel with de-seeded puree that I got a bag of from a local brewery that was doing a raspberry wheat ale and ordered too much strawberry puree. So they called us up, local brew club, and said, we got 42 bags of this stuff and we'll sell it to you for our cost. Do you want it? And we were like, let us think about that. Yes. Where can
I hate you. Truck? Just saying.
Yeah. And I got like a 30-pound bag, a Mylar bag of raspberry puree. I was like, yes,
that's awesome.
Oh my God! Yeah, well, unfortunately that was the batch that ate its way through the seal and made itself look like a murder on my kitchen floor and still stains the outside of my foundation. So yeah, but it was really amazing because it was de-seeded for one, so no seeds clogging up the racking cane, which was awesome. And there was no way, sadly, to bag it because it was like liquid puree. I mean, it was pureed down to a fare thee well. So put it in a bag and it just sort of drained through the bag and went, yeah, what? It wasn't gonna. It wasn't. Yeah, doing that's the fine. Thing, and so, but racking was a bit of a pain. But boy, that stuff was sure good.
Yeah, chances are with that, what you could do is rack off as much as you can, and then put the rest in. Pour the rest of it off the yeast that's settled, and put it in the fridge, and that should make a lot more of it settle. Even fruit gunk tends to compact really well when refrigerated. That's a trick I use when I've racked and I still don't have quite enough to top off my carboy, but there's a lot of really fluffy lees. I'll put it all in a pop bottle or a mason jar or something like that in the fridge, and overnight is usually enough, and then I can just pour whatever's good off the top of that.
That's what I did, actually. I did that, poured off the top part, and then poured the rest of the goo into a I have a giant funnel that's like, the funnel itself is like 12 inches across. And
nice.
So, yeah, with an integral strainer that you can pop out and clean. I found this at the brew shops. Awesome. And it's got this little strainer in the middle that's really fine mesh, and it's got a tiny little plastic nub on it that you can grab, and it'll pop out of there's a little inner rim that you snap this thing into. And so I just poured that full, covered it. I basically had an elastic brewing bag that I covered it with to keep whatever flies and whatnot out. And then I laid a towel over top of that to make sure that dust didn't get in there or anything. And then I just set it to drain and let it go overnight. And the next day I came and I cleaned up all the leftover guck and threw that in the recycling, and or in the compost, and then cleaned out the screen and poured the next batch of goo in there, and I just did that until I was out of goo and had gotten all I could get from it, which turned out not to be a whole lot. So it was a lot of work for not very much juice, but I felt better about it, for trying. So.
Yeah, so that's how to handle purees. Now you might think when we say you should mash your fruit and get every segment or piece broken that putting it in the blender or the food processor is a good idea. Be careful with that. If it's something that's got seeds like strawberries or raspberries, you don't want to be chewing them up too badly, because once you start cracking the seeds open, that releases tannins and bitterness.
Yep. Bitterness more than tannins, really.
Yeah, that can take a long time to age out. I did that when I left the seeded dregs in too long for a raspberry batch. It was a second run, and it took about 4 years before that batch was drinkable. So, and it was just from the funk that the seeds gave it, from leaving them in for too long. Yeah, definitely. And this is another reason why, the 2 week, if it hasn't taken it out by 2 weeks, it's not going to. Now, another thing that I do because of my winemaking background, in order to get my sugar water dissolved properly, what I would do is I would put my sugar in my stock pot with water and then bring it to a boil, and that's enough to get all my sugar dissolved. And then the book that I was following at the time, Terry Gary's Joy of Home Winemaking, suggested that you should just pour the hot sugar water right over your fruit. Ooh. You know what? It works really well. And yeah, actually it does. It sort of scalds them. So instead of having to sulfite something, scalding it works just fine too. Huh. A lot of people, when they hear that that's what I do, say, well, you're going to get the cooked flavor from it. And I don't find I do.
Well, I don't think you're actually cooking it. Like you say, you're just scalding it,
Yeah, it's just scalding it, and the other thing I find when I do that is I don't lose color like a lot of people claim they do.
Now, that's an interesting thought.
Yeah, now I don't know if it's just that I'm friggin' lucky somehow, and maybe California strawberries lose their color and Ottawa ones don't. But, I've made several batches of strawberry wine, and a lot of people claim that their strawberry wines end up being straw-colored. Mine are pink.
I used local strawberries, and mine was straw but with a pink tinge to it. And it started out all pink, and as it got older, it went more and more straw. It's still, I've got a bottle of it that's like 8 or 9 years old that I keep for sort of like to see what happens. And
I got a couple of those too.
Yeah, and it's in a flip top, so periodically I'll pour a little bit out, resanitize the top, close the flip top, and put it back. Because I want to see what it tastes like. It's like an experiment, because everybody says strawberry doesn't age well, and yet, this one doesn't taste 100%, but it doesn't taste bad either.
One thing I have found about strawberries is there's a little bit of a phenolic taste to them, and that's just what you get. I have not managed to ever have anything involving strawberries that didn't have at least a little bit of this. You gotta do that strawberry recipe Pete's got in the patron forums. It doesn't have that at all. Well, I went to a fruit winery, and I tried their strawberry wine, and it tasted exactly like mine. Huh. So even the professionals have that problem. Yeah, and you're right. Almost every strawberry wine I've tasted has that too. But I'm here to tell you that whatever it was that Pete does different with his, and follow, if you do this, people, if you're listening and you're a patron and you go run to get Pete's strawberry recipe, and I recommend that you do, because it almost took Best in Show at the Mazer Cup one year. Just missed it by a gnat's whisker. But if you do it, follow the directions, because with strawberry, it's real easy, this is interesting, for it to go sideways and taste like cantaloupe. It was still really good, but it had this like strawberry cantaloupe thing going on. It was like, okay, I really like this. And I thought it had cantaloupe in it. It was so distinct that I honestly thought it had cantaloupe in it. And I found out later that no, it was all strawberry, but the person who had made the recipe had done something that didn't work out quite right, and it was more of a temperature control issue than anything else. But it goes to this cantaloupe
note, and it's not a bad thing if you like cantaloupe, but it's not what it was intended to be like. And so I got to try some that didn't have that, and there was none of that phenol at all. Period.
Okay.
None.
All right.
Yeah. So
Duly
I
noted.
was surprised. Yeah. So
I'll try it next time if I look at